What's up? What's going on? Arvind Ramakrishna here, and welcome to Driven to Draw, where I teach you how to bring your sketches to life. So let's get started. Hey, welcome back to Driven to Draw. My name is Arvind Ramakrishna, and today we're going to be talking about exploring ideas with using thumbnails. So let's get started. All right, what do I have here is a quick sketch with a thumbnail, and oftentimes when I'm trying to create larger images, sometimes I just run out of ideas, and it's never really a good idea actually to just take your first image or just the first composition that you create and to create a large painting of it, or just a large sketch of it, because how do you know whether that's really going to be the kind of image that you want to use, that's going to have the right kind of impact and the right kind of messaging that you want when you start to draw. So one of the things that I do is to create thumbnails sketches, and that's what I'm doing here. I mean, this is sort of my tip for today, is just that when I'm exploring and you're trying to just explore different kind of ideas, thumbnail sketches are really key for you to be able to crank out, or just to do as many sketches as you can without having to spend maybe like a half hour or 45 minutes on a larger sketch. It's because you don't need to. In fact, you can just do these for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and once you've done that, you can go back and say, hey, maybe I want to take this and I want to expand this a little bit further, or I just want to explore more. Or maybe at the end of it, all you're trying to do is just to practice perspective. So I'm just going to keep going through the process here. I'm going to redraw this GTO in the same perspective. I don't even have to get very detailed. All I have to do is just block in the shape. That's all I care about. And then I might just look at, well, what do I want to change? Is this what I want? Do I want to put it in a scene where you got a guy standing right next to it? Or do I want to maybe have it in motion? Maybe that's what we'll try. We'll just have it in motion. So then how do you communicate that? So these are the things that sort of go through my head as I'm sketching and I'm just drawing. And I'm using a Sharpie marker. One of those, and these kind of Sharpie markers are not marker, but just a felt pen. And I'm using, I think, an extra thin felt pen. And what's nice about these, they don't really bleed. You can, typical Sharpie markers are going to bleed through the page, and I guess a little messy. But this is pretty good. I'm going to turn that wheel a little. So there's another thing, is you can experiment with that as well. I get a lot of enjoyment just out of doing these tiny little sketches, because it really kind of sets the stage. So here I'm going to just add a little bit of burning rubber type of feel to it, because the muscle cars for the GTOs in that era was just it was just a terrific era back then. A lot of power, and just a lot of character in the styling back then. If you've looked at some of my paintings, I often love to paint classics, because they just don't make them. The cars right now are pretty cool, and obviously they're as far as performances, they're way better. Cars from the 60s and that time frame were incredibly heavy. Or 50s, 60s. Even the sheet metal back then was quite a bit thicker. So really, super. That's why these cars were great at the straightaway, but they're not very good at handling corners. You get all that inertia as you start to take these heavy vehicles around the corners, and you get a lot of drag and not the most aerodynamic. But back then it really didn't matter, because the amount of character that you got was really fantastic. Can never get that now, never. It's not to say that the styling right now is bad. It's just that you get so much regulation, and safety requirements that it really dictates what you're going to be able to produce as far as the exterior. You're limited, and that's why a lot of the cars look the same now, is because yeah, it gets more and more challenging to make something that's really different. That's why when you look at the history books and look back, you're like, wow, they did some really special designing back then. And that's another thing you can do also with your thumbnail sketching, is to do exactly that. You can just explore just the design elements. Maybe just draw a headlamp, just to understand the shape a little bit. I mean, there's no hard rules. I mean, for me, I like to explore composition. And if I'm exploring composition, I can look at, well, where do I want my focal point to be, and how am I going to guide people's eyes to follow that focal point. And that can be done with just high contrast areas, right? You can say, hey, this area, you just bring more attention to a particular part, is to make things darker or lighter, light up a particular area. So all right, so we're coming down to the end of it. Hopefully you're able to get something out of this. And here we got two different versions now. I've got one version where you got you can see kind of the scale of the person, and then another version where you just have this thing in movement or motion. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you here next time. Driven to Draw. Have a good one.